Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Josh Walker Show. Today we're here with Dr. Robert Mackenzie. Dr. Mackenzie is an educational psychologist, family therapist, father of two grown sons, and author of the best-selling Setting Limits series, including the books Setting Limits in the Classroom and Your Strong-Willed Child. He and his wife live in Davis, California. In addition to providing family counseling and parent-teacher training workshops, Dr. Mackenzie writes for magazines and educational journals and consults privately with schools, hospitals, parent-teacher organizations, and colleges. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Dr. Mackenzie, on the Josh Walker Show. Well, hi, everybody. I'm so happy to be here today. But I must ask you, Josh, why are your eyes so big? I just don't really understand it. Well, it's not very often that I get to have a world-renowned classroom management specialist on my show. I just get so excited talking about managing the classroom. Can you give us a quick overview of what your Setting Limits program is all about? In other words, will you synthesize your program for us? Well, I would love to. An effective classroom is like a table supported by four important legs: effective structure, positive relationships, engaging instruction, and most importantly, establishing effective limit setting practices. Teachers with the best run classrooms spend most of the first 2 weeks teaching rules and procedures. It is imperative to set expectations in your class that you can and will be consistent about. Effective teachers spend most of their time managing their classrooms with procedures, not discipline. Discipline in the absence of effective structure is simply damage control. Basically, the teacher's job is to guide the learning process by providing clear limits, acceptable choices, and logical consequences that hold children accountable for their actions. I see. So the title of your book basically gives away the theory of your program. It's all about setting limits. Josh, many try to set limits, but there's no follow through or consistency. Consistency is key. If you have a no hat rule, but choose to enforce it only part of the time, students will test those boundaries. Children are by nature researchers. They are constantly researching the limits. Once you establish the limit and give consistency when they do the research, they will know definitively what is and is not acceptable. How and in what ways do you convey your limits, your rules, and your procedures effectively? Well, we see from the research of Piaget and Kohlberg that adolescents learn by action rather than just simply being told. It is in its most simple form a three-step process. Step 1, explain, model, and demonstrate the procedure. School-age children need procedures to be taught in very concrete terms, particularly the younger students. Break the procedure down into steps and teach it step by step. Telling them what to do is important, but showing them how to do it increases the instructive value of the lesson. Posting lists of class procedures in the visible areas can be very helpful for intermediate level students. Step 2, practice the procedure, rehearse it, and practice some more. Students need repeated opportunities to practice the procedure, step by step, under your supervision. Provide corrective feedback at each step so students understand exactly how they are expected to carry out the procedure. The amount of practice your students will need depends upon their skill level, maturity, and temperaments. Remember, the goal is to practice the procedure until it becomes automatic and routine. We just practice until they get it right. Step 3, reinforce the procedure with consequences until it becomes automatic or routine. When students perform a procedure correctly, give them positive feedback in the form of a good job, praise, pats, or smiles. Celebrate their successes. When students perform a procedure incorrectly, specify the correction needed and provide more opportunities for practice. You can practice some procedures on a whole class basis, but a statute of limitations applies to this practice. Compliant students resent having to practice procedures they've already mastered. When only a few individuals need practice, it's better to use separate strategic practice sessions. What are the types of things you do when students go past limits you have set or break procedures? Well, that is what I refer to as logical consequences. They are logical in that they relate to the limit you have set. For instance, if a student brings an unacceptable item to class that you prohibit, you would not make them sit in the corner. Rather, you would separate them from their item.
or when a student misuses classroom items, they should lose the privilege of using that item, not have to write an essay on why it's inappropriate. The consequences should align with the misconduct. Also, there's the matter of giving choices. For instance, if two students are talking during a designated quiet time, you would give them a choice. Emily and Stephen, you can continue to sit together and work quietly, or you can be separated and work quietly. If you continue to talk, you will be separated. Then you follow through on the logical consequences of separating them if they talk.
What about things that don't have a logical or direct consequence? What if a student is not being disruptive but just not doing their work?
Well, in that instance, it would be appropriate to speak to the student and let them know that they are going to need to finish their work just like everyone else. And if they don't do it then, it will have to be done on their own time.
Dr. Mackenzie, what would you say to those that would say your system will not always work or that it is not able to reach every child?
Well, there are basically three types of students: the students who are very easy to manage, those that are very difficult to manage, and those that display a combination of both. On the extreme end, no more than 10% of your class are going to be absolute difficult students. Now, this program is most effective for those types of students because, as I said earlier, they are researchers. The difficult students are just high researchers. Now, you will have an outlier who is seemingly impossible to manage. In those cases, there needs to be some direct involvement of parents, counselors, and administrators to determine an appropriate management plan. But I argue that plan would still contain the basic elements of
Dr.
this
Mackenzie,
plan.
thank you so much for being here today on the Josh Walker Show. Tune in next week, folks, when Kevin Bailey shows us how to be extremely handsome and Sarah Dyer tells us how to be unbelievably likable. We'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.